Ty Brady here with Brady Insurance Marketing and the Ty Brady Way. As a successful entrepreneur myself, I'm passionate in helping other entrepreneurs do the same as they rise from rags to riches and get inspired each week on the stories they tell here at the Ty Brady Way.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. Today we have Alexander Concepcion. Welcome to the show. How are you, Alexander?
I'm lovely. I'm here in Central Texas, enjoying a nice, sunny winter morning.
Is it mid-70s?
60s.
Even better. Well, there's a lot of stuff we can go into today. And, you reached out based on my social media platforms and my podcast show, and the podcast show is really growing. And so tell me a little bit about yourself, and then we can dig into kind of different directions and what you've been able to accomplish the last little bit.
Yeah. So went to school, got degrees in finance and economics, thinking I was going to get into like that corporate suit and tie finance world. And I spent 2 years completely self-sabotaging that. So I got rejected from every interview I ever did in that period and realized maybe this isn't for me. And then I kind of just gambled everything, hit the reset button on reality and moved to Austin, Texas, and just completely started from scratch. The one job I did get, I was a really mediocre employee and realized I didn't want to just coast on this very middling 6 out of 10 reality indefinitely. And so I left that reality and just jumped from side gig to side gig, did some traveling, went totally broke, and I got into real estate. So I started in this niche in real estate called apartment locating, where I work with apartment rentals, thinking I was just going to do that for a few months. And then I realized that I'm really good at this, and the entrepreneurship is actually pretty awesome. What started off as a side gig, as a side quest, has been my primary source of income for the last 8 years. And I've built a full business, Taco Street Locating, that I've been running. And I've been just running my own business and living life on my terms for the last 8 years. And I did not want to go back. Yeah, I've just really enjoyed being on my own, being independent. And along the way, the pandemic happened, and I immediately lost all of my clients. And I was freaking out because the life I had built of freedom and sovereignty and living on my terms seemed to be at risk. And I did not want to go back. And fast forward a few months, I'm watching the world fall apart. I'm watching all of these businesses in Austin crash. I'm observing a lot of my friends going through intense turmoil. And I'm seeing my business take off. And I wind up having the best year I've ever had. In the same year, a lot of other people were crashing. And it just made me wonder, why am I not just surviving, but doing amazingly in a time where so many people are not doing well? That question led me on this journey to understand, why do businesses die? And 4 years later, that turned into my book, Survival First.
2 follow-up questions to some things that you said. The first thing that I got, well, for people that may not know, so you found a niche, just basically exploring and figuring out what you wanted to do growing up, right? You found a niche. But when did you realize that niche, there was something to it and that you liked it? And then what is that niche like for those people that may not know what you do? What is that you do? Indeed, a little bit more.
Yeah. So within the world of being a real estate agent, and I actually never wanted to be a real estate agent. I just got my license because my mom kept pestering me. because I had nothing else going on. It's this niche where I help people rent apartments in large apartment complexes. So say I've got a client who rents a 1-bedroom apartment at a building and they pay 1 month rent commission, then I'll make like $1,500 to $2,000 for that one deal. So I'm just churning out deals like that all day, every day. And yeah, it's a really simple business.
And then, so when did you realize that there was something to it? Because you said, no, you're like, I never thought I'd be in the insurance business, but that's where I'm at and I love it and enjoy it. When did you realize that, hey, there's something to this and I like it?
When I first started, I was broken asking my dad for rent money. And that was humiliating as someone who was 27 years old and had 2 college degrees. And I went from being broke to quickly making $10,000 a month off of work that didn't require a ton of energy. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And a part that I've really come to enjoy about it is I effectively get to function as an ambassador for Austin, Texas, which is a city that I do love. And I get to convert my love for this city to this role where I get to help a lot of people move here and be their guide to the city. So that's a way I've come to really enjoy the business. But yeah, it's the asymmetry of energy and resources inputted to resources and freedom and sovereignty that I get as an output, which has been very favorable in this period of time. So that's why I've been doing it for so long.
But you made a great point. You said during COVID, a lot of businesses were closing, they were struggling. Why would you say during that time frame that, one, you survived, and second, then inspired you then to write your book?
Yeah. So one initial thing that I suspected, it was a twin realizations, is part of it had nothing to do with me. And I was in the right place at the right time, because during COVID, there was a large flood of people moving to Austin, and I was benefiting from external circumstances outside of my control. And it had everything to do with me because I had done a lot of things that in hindsight were very intelligent things to do, like building my own brand, having a very good, strong brand, having very robust systems and operations so that I can handle all of this new inbound business. So to reiterate, it was this twin realizations of some of it had nothing to do with me and some of it had everything to do with me. And that's one way I kind of split this series of questioning that led to this book. And that's why I focus, when it comes to risk, which is what I focus on, it's understanding the world that we exist in, that we do not control, and how we exist in that world, and how we don't necessarily control the world, the external world. We do control how we adapt and our relationship to this environment. And looking at the inside of our businesses, there's so much that we do control, and how do we make decisions that give us the best chance for survival?
I can't help but think, I believe we live in the land of abundance, and the universe has given us so much. And over time, things have been just repackaged and then put back out there. I talk about, like, back in the day, it used to be Sears and Roebuck, was catalog shopping to somebody's mailbox, right? And then over time, it became Amazon, where you can click and buy and shop on your phone. And now you look at all the options. You have more than just Amazon to buy and click and shop. And, it's always been there, but been repackaged. And then somebody found a way to then scale it and find purpose. Like you talked about, is like, you can't control the environment, the things that are out there, but at the end of the day, you can control what you can control and then make a good living doing so and helping people. I mean, you're serving people where they need a place to live. They may want to go to Austin, Texas, and you can say, well, here's a place, X, Y, here's A, B, C, D, here's all the pros and cons, right?
Yeah. So, and one of the main survival functions that my business plays is I picked an industry and a niche within that industry that happens to be extremely cyclically defensive and robust in pretty much any economic condition. And I didn't realize that was one of the benefits of what I had chosen, but because I chose that niche, it gave me a certain relationship to this environment. So having a business that people always need rentals, people always need a place to live. And if things are going haywire and people can't afford houses, like interest rates are a classic example in real estate. So I don't control interest rates. And for most real estate agents, when interest rates go up, it's awful for their businesses because their clients aren't buying houses anymore. And a lot of people aren't selling houses. But what is still happening is everyone's still renting and always renewing their rentals, or if they do move, there's always rental activity happening because it needs much less money than house buying does. So in this new environment where interest rates are higher, I'm completely fine. It doesn't bother me at all. It actually helps me because I get more people who would buy instead they're renting. And that's where I exist.
On a month, and I think, a lot of people where I live, they say, you've got to have the house or the property rented by basically June because school's getting ready to start. And there are certain cycles on when people are looking or when most leases are renewing. What does it look like for you on a good month? And then what's your busy times?
So the cycle goes with the temperature. The colder the temperature, the colder the market. The hotter the temperature, the hotter the market is a really oversimplified way of explaining it. But that is how it works. So winter is a lot slower and summer, especially July, August, is much more active. So yeah, that's how this works. And a bad month could be 0, but I've gone up to between 40 and 50,000 in a month.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've been on every point of that spectrum in a month at different times. But a very typical could be between, like, based on where I'm at now, between like 15 and 20. And it could be higher, it could be lower, but that's a pretty typical range. And what also tend to focus on, it's not just the money that could be made. And in this niche, there is a lot of money. It doesn't hyperscale in the way like bigger transactions do. But what I do find interesting is an idea that I've been playing around with what I call return on energy. So it's not just the money I put into the business to operate it, but what is the physical and psychic energy that I put into the business versus what do I receive in total. So what I have been receiving over a long period of time is what I'll describe as a very high return on energy outcome. So this money that I'm making, like, the output's nice, but what's also nice is the input is never that high. So I'm never that stressed out. And that's very deliberate based on how I've chosen to conduct the business and how I've chosen to design it. And it's given me a lot of freedom outside the business. It's very much preserved my human energy. So I'm never burnt out. I'm never stressed out. I'm never in this. I'm ever redlining myself into oblivion.
But it wasn't always that way, right? In the beginning, you were saying that you mentioned something earlier. You're 27 years old and you had to go ask your dad for rent money, a gentleman that has 2 master's degrees. When was the turning point when you finally was like, okay, I've been through some people say I've been through the suck, I've been through the mud, I've been through the trenches. When did you finally realize, hey, I've made it and I've figured out what I want to do? And, you talk about preserving your energy. It wasn't always that way though.
Oh, no. So early on, I was really frantic because I didn't want to keep asking my dad for rent money. So there was this period of, or the first 9 months, I was really getting after it. And I was inside of an agency that did this. And I just had a lot of frantic energy because I was just obsessed with not being poor. And that was a very high energy output period where I was just learning every aspect of this business and designing all these systems and processes based on what was working. And what eventually happened was I realized I didn't need to be inside of an agency anymore. I had already figured out how to do everything that I needed to do to become independent. So after that 9-month period, I left the agency, went off on my own. And in that 9 months, I think I made about like $60,000, which was more money that I had ever made at any point. And it was enough to like pay my rent and have a decent life. And then I realized that I don't need to be paying 40% of my income to somebody else because I could just make my own money and keep all my commissions. So once I had those realizations, then I had the confidence and the resources and the knowledge on how to go off on my own. And that's what I did.
That reminds me, I've said many times that it's time or money or both. And it sounds to me those 9 months, you were also paying to learn. Yes, you were giving up your commissions, but you were also learning at the same time on what worked for you and what you could take out into the world. And then, so when you decided to jump ship, how do you pick up a client?
By the time I had left, I was already generating 80% of my own leads through the systems and processes that I had already built. And I realized that I already know how to get my own leads and drive my own income. It doesn't make financial sense for me to continue to be here when what I'm paying in commission dramatically outweighs the value that I'm getting from the agency. Mm-hmm. So I already built everything on my own that I needed to go off on my own. So it was just continuing what I had already started. So drumming up new business wasn't hard for me anymore.
So how do people find you, or how did you start? Like from day one, you went into the office. Did they say, hey, here's a phone book? Did they say, oh no, here's some leads to call? What did that first 30 days look like for you? And then how did you adapt and make it your own?
Yeah. So a lot of people started off by creating Craigslist ads of all things. Because it turns out Craigslist was a really effective lead source. And I just saw all the manual work that people were putting in. I saw a lot of disorganization. I saw complete lack of systems and processes that people were implementing. So it just made sense to take what other people were doing and just build robust processes behind it so that I can launch much more marketing campaigns and then hand it off to a VA to run those campaigns for me to the point where I'm generating way more marketing with way less energy. And taking that process is what got me off the ground. And then over time, I found more marketing channels. I found new ways to get leads. And I just applied the same process where I would first do something myself. I figured out that it worked. And once I figured out something worked, then I would build a process like an SOP and then hand it off to a VA so they could handle it for me. And then that freed me up to do more high value client work. So I wasn't getting bogged down, because what happens to a lot of people in this niche, but also I think a lot of businesses where they don't have the internal operations to handle high volume business. In my case, it's like high volume client work. And I saw a lot of people burn out from trying to juggle too many clients. So I also invested a lot of energy to finding really good software and tools to make that part of my operations much more streamlined as well.
It's amazing you say that. I remember I'm pushing over 300 episodes on the show, and I talked to a guy, and I wish I would have recorded this on the show. And he says, Ty, I'm $1 million producer in the space he was in. And I said, tell me what your week's like. And he's like, I spend Monday, Tuesday calling and booking all my appointments. And then I close on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I said, okay. And he's like, I haven't been able to break $3 million a year ever. I'd really like to break $3 million a year. And we were off air. And I said, have you ever, this little piece of advice, I said, have you ever thought about hiring a VA? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, this is somebody that books your appointments, so it frees you up Monday and Tuesday. So you're out selling Monday and Tuesday. That very next year, he broke $500,000 in revenue. I mean, he broke $5 million in revenue in his business after years of just, hitting his head up against the wall. Because you talk about energy, his energy was tapped.
Yeah.
There's no more time. There was no more time.
Yeah. And that's why in my book, I hyperfixate on energy as the most important variable, because in our businesses, of course, we need money to keep going. Of course, we need time to do the things to make the money. But most importantly, we need our own human energy to power all of it. And why I think the angle that I have is kind of radical is because that energy that we have that powers our business is mostly emotional energy. And if we're in these positions where we're experiencing a lot of negative emotions, a lot of anger and stress and frustration in our businesses, it means we are likely to stop putting energy into our businesses. And ultimately, that's why our businesses die, because we let them. We stop putting energy into it. So I always look at what are things in business in the world that I don't control and the world that I do control that can cost me energy, and what are things that can give me energy. So that's largely the frame with which I'm looking at everything.
You're in your book. So for those people that want to go out there and get your book, do you have an audio version? Find it on Amazon? Where can they find your book?
Yeah, survivalfirstbook.com. And that does take you to the link to the Amazon page. So it's on paperback, hardcover, it's on Audible. I narrated it myself. So if someone wants to hear me talk for 9-10 hours, that is an option of reality. And yeah, it's there.
That would be my version of choice, my audiobook when I'm driving on the road. I get a lot of windshield time, driving to and from locations. And, I love it that I can sit there and listen to it and then go back and rewind or highlight or just do a bookmark where I want to go back and listen to. So where do you see the next 5 years going, Alexander?
Oh my God. That's a great question I've been trying to figure out, because I've hit a point with my business where it feels like I've won the game. I've learned everything and kind of how to do this. And I'm trying to figure out, where do I go I'm trying to figure out where I go the next 1 year. I'm never a 5-year planning type person, for better and for worse. I observe reality as it unfolds and I adjust accordingly. Hopefully I do see myself finding someone to marry and build a family with, but no, not there yet. But yeah, I'm just open to what reality puts in front of me.
You know, I really appreciate your taking your time to be on the show today. I appreciate your thoughts all about your energy, the high energy, and what you bring to the table. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave?
Yeah, I like to go back to survival being a choice, because I don't think businesses die, or I don't think businesses fail. It's that we choose to not put energy into them anymore. And to think of ourselves as not cogs in our own machines, but we are humans who have businesses. And to think of ourselves mostly from that human perspective lets us take care of ourselves in the context of our lives as entrepreneurs. And I think that's important to take into consideration so we don't burn out by treating our energy as like this infinite, immutable resource.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, businesses do not die. I think it's a choice. People choose to let them die because they choose to put their energy somewhere else, or they don't adapt. Wow. Alexander, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. As always, share, like, and subscribe. Go to Instagram at ty.r.brady. And as always, love hearing from you. And let me know what you want to learn on the show or what you'd like me to bring up on the show. Thanks.
You can find the Ty Brady Way on Instagram as well as Facebook. To stay connected with giveaways and Ty himself, go ahead and follow at ty.r.brady on Instagram as well as Facebook. This podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Whitney Face Media Marketing. The theme music is an excerpt from Hot Chicken of the Woods by Isaac Joel.